Hello and welcome to today's Preschool Coordinator Advisory Group meeting. This is our first live event, so if you're joining us, welcome. My name is Whitney Stevenson. I'm the chair of this group. I'm with Fayette County Public Schools, and I would like to welcome everyone. And part of our work today will be me doing a roll call of members. So I'm going to start. So if you are here, please respond when I say your name. Whitney Fowler.
Here.
Jennifer Walrod. I'm going to move on to Carla Malone.
Here.
Anna Shepard.
Present.
Barry Lee.
Here.
Christy Lewis.
Present.
Miranda Reed.
Here.
Monica Heverin.
Present.
And Carlina Sheeran.
Here.
And then I'll go back to Jennifer Walrod. Are you here with us today? All right, she may join us, I think, here in a little bit. We'll circle back around to see if she's present. And then right now, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Bartholomew, and she's going to welcome our guest here today to open the meeting.
Good afternoon, friends. It's nice to see you all again today. I'm really excited to have our second meeting. As Dr. Stevenson said, this is our first Teams Live event, so I anticipate it going smoothly, but we all can deal with hiccups if we have them. I want to introduce Greta Hilton, the Director of the Office, or Associate Commissioner, sorry about that, the Associate Commissioner of the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. She has been a tremendous support for the early childhood community, and we are grateful that she's here today. Greta?
Thank you, Andrea. So I won't take up much time. I just wanted to really just express my appreciation for the work that all of you are doing and the work that you've taken on additionally to do with this Preschool Advisory Committee to be the representative for your regions and to speak on behalf of school districts and early childhood programs as well as students and families. It's very much appreciated, and I know that it's one more thing to do on top of your already super busy schedules, but it speaks volumes to your dedication to children and families, and so I'm forever grateful for that. And I also want to say thank you to the team in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning who have done a great job in developing this advisory committee and working with you guys to get a sound agenda set and then transitioning to live events, because you know everything's done now through technology, and so it makes things a little more difficult. But again, it's a great group, and all of you are so dedicated to children, and it's noticed. So I just wanted to express my appreciation, and just know that I'm gonna hang out here in the meeting for a little bit, and I'm available should anyone have questions or comments for me. Thank you. Oh, I was just going to say thank you as I was logging off my mic and camera.
Well, thank you for that welcome. We really appreciate it, and you being here today. The next part of our agenda is a review of the norms, and I was just going to go over those really quickly. I know moving to the live event, there's maybe a few different features that we didn't anticipate the last time when we wrote our norms. So the first was be courteous, and it says use the raise your hand feature. So that actually is not available during this meeting, and so what's being asked, if you have a question, you can put the question in the chat box, or if you want to put to type I have a question, and then you could come up and we would ask you to present your question live. Mute your mic when not speaking to eliminate the background noise. And I believe the request was for us to keep our cameras on as well, so it's easier for the transition when we do speak live. The next is honoring everyone's time, limit distractions and interruptions, stay on topic, be ready and prepared, be ready to share views and thoughts, and then exhibit generosity of spirit, meaning respect different experiences and viewpoints, and this group is a place to be honest with each other. So those are our norms that we developed. We can always revisit those if we need to update those at any time. I do want to say that we now have confirmation that Jennifer Walford is on this call now, so she is present for the meeting. And then the next part of the agenda is review and approval of the last meeting minutes. So those meeting minutes have been available. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to view those. And so what we're going to do now is just ask for a motion to approve the meetings from our last meeting.
I, Anna Shepherd, make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you. And then is there a second?
I, Krista Lewis, make a motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting.
Great. Thank you all. So then our next part of the agenda are KDE updates. And so I'm going to turn this over to Andrea if she wants to get those updates started.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Stevenson. So when we were beginning to plan this agenda, we had some requests for some brief updates from the department, kind of what we've been working on as a branch. So the four of us are going to speak a little bit to some hot topics that we've got going on right now within preschool programming across the state. The intention is for you to take this information back to your regions and share any questions or concerns back with us that you receive from the friends in your region. So the first consultant that will speak will be Taisha Oglesby on preschool enrollment. Taisha?
Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the Advisory Council for inviting KDE to share our updates on our active workloads. It's always great to be included in your group. I'll be delivering updates on preschool enrollment. As many of you know, we average our December 1 and March 1 enrollment counts to calculate our yearly preschool enrollment. The fall and spring preschool enrollment average for the 2021 school year was 15,898 total eligible students. These numbers can be broken down into two major groups: the at-risk kiddos, who are 4-year-olds who meet the 160% federal poverty level, and the second category is our students who are age 3 or 4 qualifying with a disability. Our at-risk numbers came to 6,363 students, or 40.02% of our eligible students. Our students with disabilities totaled at 9,535, or 59.97%. Overall, during this pandemic, our statewide preschool enrollment is down 25%. At some point, we may want to raise up to the council, how can we support districts with child find, especially our students at risk, whose overall enrollment was down by 35%. So this was our preschool enrollment update. Next, we have Andrea with an update about GMAPs and determinations. Andrea?
Thanks, Taisha. So I meant to say before we started this, you'll see under each kind of topic here on this PowerPoint slide that there are some guiding questions. Those are some things for the council, for the group to be thinking about when thinking about these topics. These are items that we came up with that districts may have concerns, may have questions about. So if you want to take those questions and kind of roll those around in your head, thinking about each topic, at the end of this section, we'll take some time for questions and feedback from the group. So I get to talk about GMAP and preschool determinations. Fun, fun, fun. So we are in our second year of GMAP. Things are going well. It really is. And we got some updated applications, updated information for districts to put into their application. As far as from last year, we had lots of suggestions and lots of feedback from our first go around. We added most of those things in. Same thing will happen with this go around. You know, we're going to get feedback and from this group, especially how we can make it better. We want this to be a continually improving process. The application for each preschool program should hopefully be approved by May 15th. That's our cutoff date, and we will have all those sent back to everyone, remembering, of course, that your application may be approved, but the information in it might not be compliant. If the information is not compliant, then we will put that into the preschool determinations process. So that's the next step with this. Preschool determination is where we look through your GMAP application, all kinds of other information. Typically we look at visits and things, but of course we didn't get to visit anyone this year. That's a little disappointing, but we'll have some information to follow through with that, and some data reporting elements, and we will look through all of that and determine if your program meets expectation or if it does not meet our requirements. If there's a compliance issue, then we'll work with the district for the first year on some technical assistance. If it's a second year, we'll work with that district under a corrective action plan. One of the biggest issues we're running into this year is full utilization with Head Start. We know that's an issue. And so when we get to that point, we'll be talking hopefully with this group at the July meeting. Maybe we can get some ideas on how we can best support our districts when dealing with full utilization and Head Start. So those processes are rolling. We're hoping, fingers crossed, to get all the determinations out in June this year. They were delayed last year because of school closures and COVID and all of the craziness that we went through this time last year. So we're hoping to get those out in June. So that's the GMAP preschool determinations update. I'm going to send it over to Jen Riley, who will discuss a little bit about indicator 12 changes. Jen?
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Riley. I'm the Part B 619 coordinator and a member of the school readiness branch. I'm going to take just a second to discuss a couple of updates surrounding indicator 12, early childhood transitions. Just a reminder that the preschool performance report, it will be coming out soon. In the future, the school readiness branch will continue to collect the data needed. Once all the data has been submitted by districts, DIMR, the Division of IDEA monitoring and results, will be conducting the monitoring portion. For districts who report less than 100% compliance, we will issue a corrective action plan that KDE will support districts through. For those who report 100% compliance, DIMR will do a spot check of 10% of those. As we move forward, we encourage everyone just to remember that this is going to be an evolving process. There will most likely be hiccups, but KDE is always available for technical assistance. And that is pretty much all the changes I have surrounding indicator 12, and I am going to hand it over to Malika.
Yes, thank you, Jen. Hello, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Malika Williams, and I am a member of the KDE Trauma and Resilience team. So that is a group of about 24 individuals representing both Kentucky Department of Education members as well as other agencies. Within that team, are subgroups, one of which is the Student Resilience and Well-Being team. And so what we are tasked with doing is to promote and support trauma-informed approaches to enhance student resilience and well-being. Because our dissemination activities require approvals prior to being released for public consumption, I will share that we are encouraging everyone to be aware of the statute 158-4416, which is the trauma-informed approach to education, which requires each local board of education to develop a plan for implementing trauma-informed approaches before July 1st, 2021. So schools can have either existing teams or newly formed teams. Those conversations are taking place in your district, so we hope that some of you, if not all of you, are knowledgeable of those conversations and possibly have been asked for preschool input. We are also encouraging everyone to review the KDE toolkit that provides resources for understanding trauma as well as strategies for your teams. An additional resource that I would like to provide to you all is the Harvard Center for the Developing Mind. They have a lot of resources on mental health and stress. That is the end of our consultant portion. Dr. Stevens, we will pause to take any questions from the audience or gather feedback from the advisory group. If a member of the advisory group would like to ask a question, please provide feedback. Please place your name in the chat and we will give a few minutes for discussion. Dr. Stevenson, currently we don't have any questions or comments in the chat.
Looks
All right,
like Barry,
thank
looks
you.
like, hey, sorry, Whitney, it's Andrea. It looks like Barry just popped up and said question statement. So Becca, you want to queue up Barry Lee?
Thank you. I just got one question for some feedback with GMAP, if it's the appropriate time to mention that.
Yes, please.
Okay, just was thinking after some conversations with Malika of concerning GMAP, if there's lists or examples of things that we could include for districts when it comes to items in the budget that you need to verify or show proof of. Items like child find activities, or I guess when we're questioning certain budgets or items in the budget, what proof do we need to show and verify for some of those line items? So just kind of wanted to mention that.
So Mr. Lee, are you asking about child find, those activities that take place year round?
No, I'm thinking when we put our budgets in GMAP and just when there's verification questions, what specifically do we need to include? Child find was just an example inside GMAP. What verifications, if our GMAPs are sent back to us to revise? I was just thinking, if that happens a lot, is there a need to have a list of items or suggestions to put in the descriptors? So one, it eases the burden of KDE sending them back and then the district resubmitting GMAP. And that may not even be an issue. It's just a suggestion kind of question of, is that needed?
Right.
Sure.
Well, hopefully, the guidance was that when you're putting your information in GMAP, that you be very descriptive as possible, and to put that information in there as if someone on the other end has no knowledge of your district. So when it comes to items for transportation, just additional information. So are these for child find activities? If they're conferences, are these early childhood related activities? For GMAP and the districts that I reviewed, we just want to make sure that everything is clear and we understand exactly what your funds are being used for and what you have plans for those funds. As it relates to child find, we know that a lot of the districts, they have a number of activities that they do. It's year round, and we want to make sure that we understand what those practices are, because what you'll find is that in some budgets, there will be funds for child find activities. Well, those child find activities should align with, if your budget. So just those little things that connect would be really helpful.
This is Andrea. So yeah, I think that's a great description, Malika. Thank you for that. I think with moving forward with training, moving forward with next year's rollout of trainings in GMAP, and especially our leadership meetings and those regional meetings that you guys are having with your RTCs, I think that we will hopefully be able to provide a little more concrete information we don't want to provide, you know, a list because we don't want you to stick to that list because every district is different. Everyone has different comings and goings that way, but we want to be able to provide more support. And that's what this group I see as, you know, kind of a sounding board, some feedback for how we're providing that training and how we're providing that support, because we want this process to get easier and easier as it moves along. And we've done really well. The first year we did it in a pandemic, props to us. The second year it's doing really well right now. We're rolling along. So I think that's an important piece for us to take away. And I appreciate you for sharing that, Barry. Is there any other group committee questions or comments? You put your name in the chat, or if you have a question in the chat so we can get you placed up.
Jennifer has a question.
Okay, great. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm sorry I wasn't there for roll call. I could hear you all and see you all, but I could not get myself to be seen or heard. So my question is, specifically with ESSER funds, are there limitations to how that can be spent? Or, I mean, can that be spent on staffing? How can that be utilized? I may have missed that at the beginning, and I apologize if I did.
This is Andrea again. No, you didn't miss any conversation necessarily about the ESSER funds. We just want districts to understand that those can be used with preschool programming. Within the documents and the guidance that the department has put out and the guidance from the federal government, there are stipulations and different things. I suggest maybe we can talk about that at a different point together, and we can have a conversation about how we could use those funds. But I think within that guidance document that the KDE's put out and the information will tell us what we can use. But yeah, that we're absolutely encouraging you to use those if you can. That's something that preschool is and can be involved in. They're not just K-12 funds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm glad that you were able to get on without too much trouble.
Yeah.
Looks like Anna has a question.
Yes, I just wanted to be sure, when Jen was speaking, on the indicator 12 changes, I just wanted to make sure that I understand if there's changes that I'm not aware of or the group. So I just wanted to see if there was something that I may not have information on or may need an update on.
Sure.
So.
This is Andrea again. We did talk about those at our, what season I am? Spring leadership meetings. It was not talked about as much with the Ashland region because Sylvia Starkey, our division director, could not attend that meeting, but we will be providing additional guidance here soon out for you all about that. The biggest change right now, nothing will change with how it's collected, you know, how you put the information in. We'll probably use a Google form this year instead of a SurveyMonkey. We're trying to get away from that, put more into the Google universe there. So that all that will stay the same. The dates are the same. June 30th when it's due. It's the after. It's the monitoring of that. We want to make sure that we are meeting all of our requirements to OSEP and to the state, you know, monitoring programs as well. So I think that we will. How it will look is the data collection is going to be collected through us in our branch, and then we're going to hand that over to the Division of IDA monitoring results, and they're going to take it and run with it. But we will be providing some additional clarifications about that, since that is going to be a new process. Like Jen said, it's going to be new for them and for us on how we get this information collected. So we want to make sure that we're meeting everyone's needs. But that the biggest piece will be, I think, for us as a community, an early childhood community, to get is the 100% compliance. So if you're 100% compliant, they still will do 10% off the top to say, okay, spot check. We're going to make sure that you're 100% compliant. We're going to go through and see some things. It's going to take some back and forth trying to figure out how we can get records and things like that. But it definitely will be something I think this group maybe can put on our docket for July to talk about. Maybe we can have some extra input there. Maybe we can have some things for you to look at to say, hey, is this going to work for us? That's something that as a group we can talk about. Does that sound okay, Anna?
Yes, thank you for the update. I was just a little bit concerned that I'd missed something totally somehow. So thank you. Yeah, that makes
sure.
yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. I'll look forward
Sure.
to the extra information.
Great. Thanks, Anna. So real quick, thank you all for putting your names and things into the chat. If you are watching as an attendee, if you're watching as a person not within our group here, if you have questions or comments or concerns, you can place them in the Q&A box. It's up on the top of your screen. It has like a little speech bubble with a question mark in it. You can use that piece to provide feedback or ask questions of the group. We have a monitor. We have someone who's monitoring that box if you have anything to place in there. All right. Anything else for the KDE consultant group?
I don't see anything, Andrea.
Right.
So I guess we'll turn it back over to Dr. Stevenson.
All right, thank you all. I did want to mention too, I don't know if this was said at the beginning, but there can be an 8 to 10 second delay in us speaking. So just to be aware of that, if there's some silence or feels like awkward silence, there's just a delay in some of that. So I just wanted you to be aware. And then if you ask your question because of the delay, especially if you want to give your name first and then your question. So that's just very helpful in the process. So sorry, I forgot to mention those in the norms earlier. So our next thing on our agenda is an update from the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, and we have the director here, Miss Amy Neal. So she is going to come and share some information and also has a guiding question for us to consider while she shares.
Hello, how are you? I'm glad to be here today. I'm Amy. I wanted to tell you just a little bit about myself. Here in a couple days, it'll be my 1-year anniversary at the Kentucky Governor's Office of Early Childhood. And I will tell you that after about 20 years working in education and philanthropy, I was really thrilled to have the opportunity to join this administration because of their commitment to education from cradle to career. I'm very passionate about the subject because I've seen firsthand how education can impact someone's life. And so this is sort of easy for me to talk about because I'm very passionate about the subject. Our mission here, just as a reminder, is just to provide leadership and direction for the Commonwealth to ensure that there is a comprehensive and sustainable prenatal to age 5 early childhood system to ensure that all children have a strong start. So last year, before I actually started the job, I did a lot of research, and I thought it was really important to really understand where we've been. Even though I was really around for a lot of it, I was working in Northern Kentucky, and I was engaged in a lot. I watched a lot of it, but I always like to just sort of step back and just review, because Kentucky really can be proud of a lot of achievements, starting with the Kids Now legislation in 2000, but also, you know, Kentucky was one of the very first states to develop early childhood standards, to have an office of early childhood, to develop a consensus-driven definition of kindergarten readiness, to implement a kindergarten screener, to have an early childhood profile. I still will talk to states around the country and they can't believe it. And so, you know, we've also been able to secure 2 very large competitive grants. With all that being said, still we have way too many children every year that start school behind. And so we have a long way to go. So we want to build on our strengths, and that's our roadmap. In 2019, there was a strategic plan that was built, and to operationalize that 5-year plan, because it's quite big, we developed 2 priorities. And one of them was to unify the early childhood system. And the second one was to strengthen and cultivate partnerships, really thinking about that state to local alignment. So with that being said, I wanted to provide some quick updates on our strategic plan and be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But we have applied for 2 large grants. One was around birth to 3 and advancing best practices and connecting health and early childhood systems. That is a $1.2 million grant over 5 years. We should hear about that in the summertime. There'll be about 20 who receive that grant. The other grant is around early childhood governance and financing to support children of color and children experiencing poverty. I'm really, really excited about this grant. I think this one looked really strong. It's a $1 million grant over 3 years, and it's about piloting and testing and growing bright spots. So that was a strong application. I'm excited about that. Another update is the Early Childhood Institute that we normally have in the summer, usually over a couple days in June. And we've taken the opportunity to refresh that. We're evolving that into a year-long series of trainings. We're going to have a kickoff in June, and we're going to have some in person, some are going to be virtual, and we're going to have some very targeted sessions. For example, some around leadership, some around family child care home, some for strictly community early childhood councils, and so on and so forth. So stay tuned on that. The standards, I know everybody wants an update on standards. With the preschool development grant, the work started before I was in the office on revising the standards, adding a standard for technology for 3- and 4-year-olds, developing a standalone standard for approaches to learning, and still to revise the introduction and appendices. I actually just got off the phone with the chair of our professional development committee. What I can tell you around timeline is we're looking at, we believe, July, but we will have more information for you soon. We've recently had a staff change, and so we're trying to wrap our arms around what that looks like, but we will be able to share information soon on that. The other update I wanted to provide is around our work with community early childhood councils. Many of you all are members there, and we really appreciate that partnership. We've spent a lot of time over this past year providing technical assistance and support, providing a lot of training around data-driven practices and lifting up excellence in the field. Really happy to report that we have 150% increase in participation in our webinars that we're doing every other month. And I think that says a lot. And we're working very closely with those partners to really change those strategies from those sort of one-time activities to that long-term behavior change. The last thing I wanted to just share with you all is we're really proud of the diversity in the leadership that we have leading some of our committee work. Dr. Rena Gratz, from Jefferson County Public Schools is leading our Shared Accountability Committee. Dr. Felicia Cummings-Smith is leading the Diversifying Revenue Committee. So she, oh my goodness, was such a great help with both of those 2 grants that we've submitted. John Roden is leading our Alignment and Investment Committee, and then Dr. Jaso Gilbert is leading the Professional Development Committee. So she's doing a superior job with the early childhood standards. So that's my update for today, and I sincerely appreciate the invitation to be here with you all today.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Ms. Neal. We appreciate that, that you coming and joining us today and bringing that information. And then the guiding question I was just going to ask that we had up on the screen is, how can the governor's office best support districts with the standards rollout, and how would training be delivered? And I think that's just something for us to think about. I'm not sure if you have any, anything that you want to share regarding that, but as a council to think about once they come out, like what the support we would need and then what that would look like.
Well, Dr. Stevenson, I would say that, one of the things that Dr. Gilbert mentioned was really wanting to mirror the timeline that KDE has regarding, that's on your all's website, around rolling out standards, around the release, around the training schedule, and then doing some targeted trainings. But I think of most importance is ensuring that everyone's at the table to talk about what training looks like, what training sounds like. And so, that's all of the partners who utilize the early childhood standards. So public pre-K and the regional training centers have to be at the table from the very beginning. And so we'll be convening those conversations very soon. So I hope that helps a little bit. And the other thing that I would just add is that, our ears are open. So, whatever ideas and thoughts and wants that this group has, we hope that you'll come to us because we'll be listening.
Yes, thank you for that follow-up. I think just even, for the teachers that I work with and support, the standards are all just so intimidating, just how big, what they look like. I mean, the information is, is in there, is definitely what we follow and support. It just, it can be very intimidating just initially getting that information and hearing their updates. And I think that's a great thing that, many people will be around the table for the supports and, how we can then, support our child care providers, in our districts about, the standards and what those are and using those in their centers as well. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Ms. Neal?
Dr. Stevens, I just want to let you know that I've checked the chat and there are no questions or names in the chat.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you. And we're going to move on to our Head Start update. And this is from Christy Lewis, who is the co-chair of this committee, and she has some information to share with us regarding Head Start.
Thank you, Dr. Stevenson. I appreciate your leadership for our committee. Just a few little updates. I want to make sure that, as Amanda had mentioned earlier, or Andrea had mentioned earlier, that as we're talking about full utilization, remember that Amanda Flannery is our Head Start Collaboration Director out of the Governor's Office. And then just recently announced yesterday, we have a new program manager out of our regional office in Atlanta, and her name is Maria Goss. So as you're partnering with school districts and as we are doing the work that best serves all of our children and families here in the Commonwealth. Just remember that those are two great resources that you can use. So feel free to reach out to Amanda Flannery. She's our Head Start Collab Director, and or if needed, Maria Goss, and she starts effective May the 5th. So we're excited to have her joining our regional team out of Atlanta, and we know that she'll bring great insight and information as we support our Head Start and collaborative partners across the Commonwealth. So that's all I have for today, but I appreciate the opportunity to give some Head Start updates. And our guiding question in this group is, how can districts and Head Start partners strengthen our relationships? Communication is key in every part of our jobs, and I think just having strong partnerships and looking, as Amy said earlier, in what those streaming funds, how can we diversify those streaming funds to best serve all children and families across the Commonwealth? And being great partners is part of that process. So if there's anything I can do, please let me know. And Dr. Stevenson, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you for the time.
Dr. Stevenson, you're on mute.
It would help if I wasn't on mute. Sorry about that. I was just going to leave it open for just a second to see if anyone had any questions that they've added to the chat.
Dr. Stevens, currently there are no questions in the chat.
Great. Thank you. So the next update on our agenda is from the Regional Training Center, and today we have Stacey Stevens, who is the director of the Ashland RTC, with us, and her guiding question is for our group is on the screen as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Stevens.
Hi, I'm Stacey Stevens, the director of Ashland RTC, and first I just want to say thank you for the invitation to join you today on behalf of the RTCs. It's really refreshing to see all of you stepping into this role and dedicating your time to ensure that we as a state are not just meeting the needs of our young children, but going above and beyond and providing the best opportunities and the best services and quality experiences. So just personally and professionally, I just really appreciate that and thank you for that. I'm sure you all know the basics of the RTC. There's 5 in Kentucky. There are things that we all do that are similar. As a former preschool teacher, I tend to reflect everything or connect everything to a children's experience or a book. So I just kept thinking we are all alike, we're all different. But there are things that we all offer that are general. We offer trainings and support and technical assistance on just a variety of topics, anything from the IEP process or trainings on assessments or screeners, things that are just around the standards, good teaching practices, developmentally appropriate practices in teaching those things like math and language and literacy and science. We all offer trainings around those kinds of things. We all have a resource library and we all have an assistive technology lending library. Those are things that we all have in common. We work together as a state. We come together as a group and are working right now and supporting the SPDIG work with the Pbis, and each RTC has their own Pbis coach that is working to support a specific district within our RTC regions. But also, just aside from that coach, the RTC is supporting that work just statewide. And if you have specific needs in your district, then of course you can always reach out to your RTC to help support and address those needs within your district around needing behavior supports and things like that. Also around the Pbis work are the Pbis Academies. I'm sure that you're familiar with those. but each RTC is helping to kind of put the word out and spread the word, and the cohorts, there are cohorts that are already in action, and it's set up with a group of teachers or a group of teachers from districts, and they applied to be a part of it. But it's not like all of Ashland is together and all of Berea is together, but there's a few teachers from different regions that are brought together in the cohort. So there's a lot of collaboration going on across the state and working together across the state, and the Pbis coaches is supporting that work. But that is still open, and that the application for that is going to remain open until all of those spots are full. So that's something that we are still trying to push out and encourage all of our districts across the entire state to take advantage of. Things that we have going on right now in the RTC, we are currently being more intentional with Indicator 12 and trying to support districts with transitions and placement and documentation. It goes without saying that it was a unique year and that things are not as they typically are. And it's had that trickle down effect. So everything is affecting everything else. But we're being very intentional about how we can support districts with that, with the transitions, with placement, with documentation. And usually we, at the very least, are having weekly collaboration. We're getting together, of course, virtually, but or talking on the phone, but just kind of brainstorming of the best ways to meet the needs of all of our districts. And we share resources and ideas, and we're just kind of brainstorming on the best way to help our districts out and support our districts. Also going on right now, we're all kind of in the process of developing inventories, working on inventories to determine needs of our individual districts. So aside from those things that we are all alike, the things that we do that are different within the realm of being alike, but we do individualize the trainings and supports that we offer within our individual RTC regions. And that kind of stuff is based on gathering information from our districts. It might be a Google form or SurveyMonkey, maybe a listserv. Different RTCs gather that information in different ways, but we have that ongoing communication to try to determine what our district needs as a whole, so the districts within our RTC region, and we use that information to determine what kind of trainings we're going to work on and develop for our different regions. We also, any district that has any need outside of what we're offering to the whole group can reach out and say, hey, we need support in this, or, I have a teacher that needs training in this, and we are always ready to just, jump in and meet that need however's necessary. So I think that some of the hot topic things that we're working on, different RTCs are working on, and then some of us have been working together. Social emotional is a big focus right now. Personally, I can speak for Ashland. We are offering a social emotional series, and it's just once every 2 weeks. A 1-hour training focused on one of the core competencies, I can't say that today, from the CASTLE framework. We are looking a lot at anti-bias education, and of course, lots of focus on Pbis. Usually the way that we handle things that we work on together is one RTC or a couple RTCs will take the lead and start working on that, and then we just collaborate and share ideas. We have a Google Drive that we put all of our shared information in, so we can make sure that we're working hard, smarter and not harder. So we do share the things that we have and bounce ideas off of each other when specific things come up. So I think that is all of my updates. So are there any questions for me that I can help answer?
Stacey, there are no questions in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
So Stacey, we just want to say thank you for coming and providing these updates today. It's been very helpful to hear the work of the RTCs across the state. So thank you very much. So the next item on our agenda is the priority work. And this is the topic today is quality programming. And during our first meeting, we came up with topics that as a group we would like to talk about, discuss as we move forward, with this group and with just state-funded preschool across the state over the next few years. And so Christy and I met with Andrea just to kind of go through all of, what we discussed at the first meeting, just to come up with some guiding questions for us to talk about and think about today as we begin to move work forward. And so, Andrea, I don't know if you have anything that you would like to add, to the development of this, a discussion that we had.
This is Andrea. So I just wanted to let the group know during this section, you do not have to put your name in the chat to speak. You can just open your mic and announce yourself and speak. We're going to keep that way, keep the conversation going. We don't have to keep going back and forth to the chat unless there's something you want to put in the chat to preserve. That's fine, of course. But we really want this just to be a really open discussion about quality, what it looks like, how we measure it, how we're going to come back from packets and iPads back to real life. So I will let Whitney and Christy lead the conversation, and I'll just sit back and take some notes.
All right. Thank you, Andrea. And Christy, feel free to jump in too with this lag. I know it's sometimes hard to do that. But as we all know as a group that the move away from the ECHRs, this kind of leads to the first question and some just food for thought. As measuring quality, as that's been something that's been used in the past for state funded, if we don't have the ECHRs as the instrument or the tool to use, like what would you consider, or how would we, ensure that it's measured in the future and that our programs and our classrooms are providing quality programming? And if you want to share, what you're currently doing in your district, if you have other measures, right now besides the ECHRs that you're using, just kind of highlighting what we're already doing in our districts especially as we move away from the ECHRs.
Whitney, this is Christy, and I guess I'll kind of start off. And I was thinking about this, and one of the comments that we brought up last time was talking about class, and in our fully blended program, we use class a lot as a tool. I really enjoy using the class tool as a measurement because it looks at those classroom interactions. And as I've been brainstorming what quality looks like after a pandemic, I've always heard our staff talk about, well, this is my ECHRS year. We're always ECHRS ready, and our teachers have that in their classrooms. But it's those quality interactions. And I love the opportunity our teachers have had, like Stacey was talking about with the Pbis training. And I think coming back from the pandemic, it's going to be really important to look at that social emotional development and just those quality interactions. So, maybe a tool that looks at quality interactions.
I'll kind of, this is Barry Lee, agree with Ms. Lewis on some of those statements. And I think probably the emphasis for me is the quality interactions, but ensuring that we're still introducing foundational academic skills with math and reading. And I think of what we try to implement in our classrooms, and I see it when I I get to visit other schools in a non-COVID year, of knowing that, you know, we have our interest stations and things like that, but even we're still introducing the basics of math facts, numbers, letters, books, just ensuring that that's a model process, because you can have great art stations and painting, but if we're not teaching those the basic vocabulary of academics, I think we're really missing a point in early childhood. And while I think Eckers measures that and class measures to a point, I think that's a major emphasis for me, because when they start kindergarten, they're going to see the numbers and the letters and hear that the terms adding, subtracting, you know, just not going over the top with it, but ensuring that that language is always there, and that foundation of math and reading is embedded in the preschool classroom.
This is Whitney. I'm not sure who was going to say that. I was just going to say, as I heard Barry say that, it just makes me think of that intentional teaching piece. That's what, you know, that we know that we're in there intentionally doing activities and providing experiences for children that will impact, you know, who they are now and their future growth. So that's what came to mind, Barry, as you were sharing that, was the intentional teaching piece.
This is Jennifer Walrod. I would agree with Whitney that, you know, as we come out of this pandemic, there's still some really important parts of Eckers that I think we need to not veer too far off from, because we here in Scott County, we've been virtual all year with some targeted instruction groups coming in little by little, but, you know, virtually it feels a lot more like kindergarten when you're teaching, because those social emotional skills are getting missed, because it's just very difficult to, although my teachers have really thought outside of the box and done a lot of great things, it's really difficult to have those experiences when you're not in a group together. So for us, we're really looking in the fall for making sure that students get those social experiences again, and that they're getting some intentional teaching in those social and emotional areas, with trauma-informed care in mind, because we've all now experienced sort of a type of trauma. And we specifically really are trying to focus on conscious discipline as a tool to kind of identify whether or not we're implementing good practices in that area. I think teachers, good preschool teachers, the ones that really know what they're doing, embed all those academics in the activities that they're working on within those centers and within the activities that they provide every day. But what kids have missed out on in this pandemic is learning how to sit and attend and listen. And I know that here in Scott County, our kindergarten teachers are most concerned about that. They can teach them the academics. They're worried about kids being able to behave and attend and know how to participate in a group. And so I really think we as a committee have to be careful about not going too far away from what's developmentally appropriate in early childhood, and really what the focus needs to be.
Hi, this is Anna. I was just going to comment on, yes, with what Christy said and also what Lee said and Jennifer, but I definitely think, you know, having some type of adult-child interaction tool like class to be able to capture that, whether that's the class tool or, you know, classroom walkthrough documents, but to be able to capture what's going on and the interaction between the teacher and the child. And certainly the developmentally appropriate practices and all the trainings that RTCs and everyone has done in the past and that teachers need, I think that's critical to making sure that we're using and doing and following all of that. also I think about the preschool program review that we have and that process, which I think is, still key to this. And if you are blended with Head Start, you also have the program improvement report, or the PIR, with lots and lots of data that is captured in that. And then just a lot of things, I think, because I am blended, of the Head Start monitoring process and just various pieces of that. And one key thing I think is, family surveys, because we can have, observation tools that we're gauging the adult-child interaction, and we're assuring that teachers are following the developmentally appropriate practice and they understand all of that. But then, we were talking about social emotional learning and other needs, that kids trauma-informed care, with kids and families. So I think really just being able to capture as much as we can needs of our families and how we can better serve them after coming out of the pandemic.
Yep, I think we kind of, as we've talked through that kind of answers both, or gets to the first and second question. Like, what is after the pandemic? Definitely, we know supporting students and families through the social emotional piece, and ensuring that developmentally appropriate practices are being used, especially for the children that are coming back that have missed out this school year, whether it's all been virtual or a hybrid model, or however districts are being able to provide those services. But I do want to go back to the first question. So this is something too that I just had a conversation with Andrea about, was a tool, because if you all, which I'm sure you have at some point, there's not a whole lot of instruments out there to get at this conversation that we're having. And we know that using the ECHRs was the environmental, which is definitely an important piece, but we know the interactions that children have, with their teachers definitely is something that needs to be considered. And would it be something as a state that we looked at and brought pieces together and thought, this is something that we could create for us in our current state and use it across the board in every district? Or is it, that we keep looking out there to see, is there something that would get at this, or a tool, but that would be all encompassing of everything that we've discussed and will continue to discuss in this group over throughout the year? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
This is Jennifer Walrod again. I would love to see us pull some pieces together. I have always felt like what's out there gets at some good pieces, like ECHRs with the environment, class with the language and literacy, the ELCO even back in the day, those items. I would love to see us pull from those to kind of create a Kentucky assessment that would really get at what is best high quality early childhood for Kentucky, because I think there isn't anything out there that I know of right now. So I think that's a great idea.
And I agree that it needs to be a tool that's consistent across all districts in the state.
I think that within our district, we had some really good practices going on, but just having that visual and of even ECHRs, for all its faults and all the greatness of it, people were so much more intentional, and it just improved the teaching that was going on. So to not have something, I think we don't have that guidance for our teachers that some of them need.
Yes, and I agree with all of that. And I think it was Christy that made the statement of, about ECHRs, ECHRs ready. We would hear that when we were doing that, and, our conversation would be, is you should always, everything that you do for the ECHRs, you should do, be done every day. And just, I think it was at times intimidating for our teachers in a sense, because, they get observed and their principal or their building level staff are in there. But to have that done and then for feedback, I think it's just very intimidating. And sometimes it would get that, I'm ECHRs ready, and just having those conversations that high quality should happen every day, whether we're in here with an instrument or not. But it did give them a focus, but I do think that we could expand that focus and really have an opportunity to expand the high quality conversation and what the look-fors are in our programs.
I agree, and I think a lot of times the Eckers observations, or if you were Eckers ready, you were ready for a 3-hour observation. Instead of, even though I think a lot of it is intentional and it carried over from day to day, but also knowing that if we had an instrument that was more focused, smaller in size and length, or spread out over different parts of a year, instead of a 3-hour observation, knowing that, you're doing 3 or 4, for myself as a director, I'm in the rooms daily, so you see those things, but other districts, some directors are not, and principals are not able to do that. But if there's spot checks along the way, and it's not 3 hours, it's something that's quick, simple, but knowing that it's embedded daily and not just practicing for the main event. And then when they leave, we go back to kind of the old babysitting process. And I think I've moved really far away from that. I do, but we don't want to go back there either.
Yeah. I think it was always so intimidating for our teachers too, because they're the only faculty or staff that has somebody in their room for 3 solid hours, and it's an either make you or break you. And so, I like the idea of having smaller snippets where you could gather evidence over a period of time, and the focus might be something different each time, or you may have the same different focuses each visit, and then see how they grow. Because I think that's what we've got to get to as a state, is not the autopsy piece of it, but how are we growing? So I think that would be beneficial.
And that they're the only staff within your district that has to have so many examples of this type of interaction, so many examples of this type of interaction. They're being judged not only on their teaching, but how their environment is set up too, where no one else across the district is really set up in terms of their observations to be, if we could call it, judged or criticized for. So it causes some tensions at times, and it just is overwhelming to them, because to try to keep up, oh my gosh, how many times did I ask these questions? Which is always good to continue to ask those strong questions. But like you said, if you didn't ask enough of them, you go from a 5 to a 3.
Yeah, I love that idea as well. And it sounds more like a walkthrough document or walkthrough tool. So maybe the best parts of Eckers and class and ELCO and all of those documents could be pulled out, agreed upon, and then broken down. I love what you said, Barry, I guess, about the spread out over a year, because it's going to look different, not only in each individual county and district, but in individual classrooms. Teachers do individual growth plans for a reason, going back to what Monica said. So even as a director, when I go into a classroom, if I have the large document that has everything that we're aiming for to be going on, but then I have something similar to a walkthrough tool that I'm going to use, I might then choose myself as a director to focus on just the parts that teacher needs assistance with and reinforcement with on that particular day. And if there's 10 items on there, there may only be 2 that this teacher needs me to focus on to provide feedback on, so that she or he can grow. So I think that would be more in alignment. I mean, I do walkthroughs in my district for K-12 as well. So it would be more in alignment with what K-12 has, that they have a document like that. You come in, it can be captured in a short 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however long you choose to stay, but could also be captured in a short amount of time, especially if we're asking building principals. All of my classrooms are in 7 elementary schools. So if we're asking them to join with us and be on the same page with what needs to be happening, I think it would be a great thing for us to look at, moving forward with something that would be easy for everyone to use.
Anna, I love what you said about that. And Whitney, not to jump forward, but I think that would allow us to really connect the quality to the regulation, because we could look at the regulation, look what it says, and then find those best parts Something else that I've thought about after Whitney and Andrea and I talked is when, part of our job is also to develop leaders within the teachers and all the staff that we have. So if there is a way to have a piece of this guidance document or a piece of this quality that allowed for mentoring between the staff, so that of course the supervisor is going to come in and we have to use this for quality. But if there was a piece of it that they could go into another peer's classroom, or find a district close by that's doing some great things and say, hey, this is something as a classroom teacher they can take in. I think that only allows them to improve, but it gives them a guidance. We develop that ourselves, but as we're building leaders and great teachers, I think it's important for us to think how we're going to teach them to have that quality, but also mentor fellow staff members in the building. So something that's easy for the staff to understand, not just administrators.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, Christy, in all Head Starts, but I know in the Big Sandy area, we do submit a mentor plan. I think that might be statewide. I'm not positive about that, but we do each of the 5 districts in my area, we submit to the grantee director a mentor plan. So if we have a new teacher or just someone that maybe isn't where they should be on class or ECHRS, that we would have a veteran teacher mentor a teacher. So we have that ongoing, and have actually expanded it to some extent with our family advocates or anyone new that comes on staff. So yes, I love that. Thank you for that.
Thank you all so much. I'm sure you all are too. I'm taking a lot of notes about this, about what this could look like for the future for our programs. But I did wanted to say this, that the ECHRS is still what we use in our standard. It's not gone away. But this conversation is the steps that we can, are taking to move that forward. As we know that, changes may come, and we'll have a plan in place. But I just wanted to, say that right now the ECHRS is still what we have, and, we're used to it and we do it, and, we're all comfortable with that. But this is just looking at ways that, moving this forward, what it can look like for the state of Kentucky and state-funded preschool. So perfect. And I know that Christy had mentioned the third question, how do we connect quality to regulation, on the comments that were made. And I was just going to ask Andrea to jump in here to provide just any feedback about this question that she might have, just to kind of help guide our conversation.
Thanks, Whitney. This is Andrea. So we had talked in our little group, we had talked as a big group with our last meeting about regulation, about how we know that the OSIL says all the time regulation is the floor, and we want to get our buildings built up with quality, and some of our programs are still hanging out in the basement. We're trying to get them up to that regulation floor. But looking at our regulation, they were written in 1990, and quality is not explicit in the regulation. There's lots of stuff about developmentally appropriate practices. There's lots of stuff about what you have to have in your areas, quiet areas, loud areas, that kind of thing. But how can we think about regulation and quality? How can we connect those two? Because we know that when we need districts to increase their quality, we want everyone to have a great quality program. We know we have to push harder on some districts than we do others based on just past experiences. And how can we push on regulation to say this is part of law here? Our regulations, our statutes, how can we use that piece to leverage programs who may be resistant to increasing their quality? What are some of your thoughts about that? That's Whitney and Christy and I talked. This came up, and we know that not all of our coordinators, are as familiar with the regulations as some are, but I think it's important to know what's in there so you can use that to leverage and say, hey, I need to have this because the developmentally appropriate practices is explicit in my regulation, just like you would treat a third grade class based on K-12 regulations. So what are y'all's thoughts on that? I'll turn the conversation back over to Whitney and Christy.
If I could jump in there, I think sometimes we even though we're trying to combine them, I think it's hard to observe both at the same time and it not end up being a 3-hour observation. So when I stop and think about the regulations, and let's look at it from an Eckers observation. You're going in and you're looking for math and language and literacy, but you're also looking to ensure that you have so many books, so many soft items, so many large items. The rubber mulch is 6 inches deep. You mentioned kicking, jumping, hopping outside in the motor. You know, I'm just throwing some things out of, you know, I think sometimes, even though some have a debate on what's age appropriate and not, I think we need to look at preschool in 2 separate areas. I think we need to look at regulation, but then I think we need to also look at more academic focus for preschool. And again, that's a debate, and some may not agree with that statement. But I'm not sure you can always go in on one observation and it not be 3 hours if that's all we're going to do. But again, going back to the previous conversation, if we can spread those out, there may be a visit that we focus on certain academic areas and some regulation, but then there may be an overall visit of regulation. You know, did the kids wash their hands before coming in or coming back in from the playground? And sometimes you can double those up, but sometimes you can't because, again, you're missing a lot because you're over here looking for this item in a certain interest center. You're making sure that they have at least 6 science examples in the science center versus are we really looking for that intentional teaching conversation that I think Whitney mentioned earlier. So again, how do we do that? I don't have an answer. I just think we need to realize sometimes we have to separate regulation and the regulation for quality when it comes to the checklist versus the quality when it comes to the academic piece. Does that make sense?
It does to me. I wonder if we couldn't, and I know if you did it at the beginning of the year that, you know, people might be like, okay, I've got all this out and then I'm gonna put it up and they're gonna leave me alone the rest of the year. But I don't think anybody would do that because if you're gonna go to the trouble to get the centers out and going, what I wonder is if we couldn't turn in something like just a checklist or even each teacher, here's the room area. So we do the measurements and we say we're starting out the year with that much mulch in the playground and we're starting out the year with all these centers together and they've got these items in them, and then knowing that the teachers can rotate them in and out, but almost like an assurance that we start the beginning of the year with, we've inspected the room and this and this, these, all the regs are in place as far as that goes. And then we could focus our in-person observations more to the language going on in the classroom, the interactions, because I always had a hard time, you know, because I always want to keep my ears open for that rich language while I'm over there counting, you know, all the different things in the math center and things like that. And I think if we make it clear to the teachers that all that stuff has to be out, you know, we're checking it at the beginning of the year, but, you know, it's got to, you know, we're going to keep it going the whole year through and you can switch out and do what you want. I don't know what would be the difference in us saying at the beginning of the year versus one day in October, you know, that we're going to check it, because if their heart's not in it, you're going to get that reaction anyway, I guess is what I'm not eloquently saying.
This is Marlena, and I would say I would go back to what Barry was saying. I think that you can get too caught up in how many items are in the room. Really, it's more important what those teachers are doing with those items than what's actually in there. And I think we spend a lot of time making sure that there's this many math materials and this many books, but what we should be looking at is how we're actually using them, because that is truly what makes a difference in whether our children are going to learn at high levels or not. You know, it kind of makes me think, and people may not feel this way, but I'm that way about lesson plans. There are people who can write beautiful lesson plans and not be able to deliver it all. And then there are people that their lesson plans are not so fabulous, but boy, they are fabulous teachers and they are making huge gains with children. And I would rather have the latter any day than the first.
Carlina, I completely agree with you and Barry and Monica. I think that's great. You know, one of the things we've done is we've taken that wonderful document that the RTCs gave us over ECHRS, and the teachers have to complete that checklist themselves before, you know, they're ECHR'd. So I think a checklist like that it was more self-reflective, that the teacher had to, you know, that's on the teacher part. And like you said, Carlina and everybody else, that the interaction is the key. You know, and it's got to be a mixture of both, because we have to have that. We have to have that piece. But yeah, I think that's great points.
And to piggyback off of some of that, I really feel like, maybe I'm incorrect in saying this, but you know, second grade teachers aren't graded or scored on whether or not the playground equipment is up to par or the mulch is 6 inches deep. I mean, to be honest, does anybody even inspect that other than your custodians? So I feel like we do have to separate. I agree with Barry. We have to separate some of those regulations out. That is really a district level requirement that should be agreed upon and you know, reviewed at the beginning of the year or however it's done. Materials in the classroom, teachers easily could check off and know that they have that guideline to know kind of what types of things need to be in centers. But you're right, it's the interactions that really make the most impact with students, and it's that intentionality with the materials and teaching.
In our K-12 world, we, for many years, utilized instructional rounds, the Harvard and instructional rounds. So I used to always tell my superintendents and, you know, that we've had or whomever, that class was our pre-K complement to that, because both were looking at adult-child interactions. So, you know, it wouldn't necessarily have to be class, but some kind of tool to gauge that interaction between the teacher and the child, I think is critical for what Carlina said and what we've been discussing.
So this is Whitney. I think that this is a great discussion, and actually my mind is starting to process, even here at the district level, some things that we could even put in place, you know, to ensure things in a more efficient way than maybe we currently do just in our program, and to help teachers, because, you know, the beginning of the year doing a checklist is stressful. You know, how can we help support that? But I did want to go back to, Barry had mentioned the academic focus for, you know, looking at that. And I think that just for, you know, just in our field of early childhood, we have to be very careful using that term of academic focus, because some people take that directly to making preschool look like kindergarten. And I'm not saying that's what Barry was doing at all. And amongst us, I you know, we have those pre-academic skills, and that has to be intentionally done in the classroom. You just can't put blocks out and not have those intentional, meaningful conversations for children to begin to learn numbers and the skills with that. So I do think, you know, and even as Jennifer was saying at the district level about the playground, you're right. You know, our playground folks, they go out and monitor that and then provide and fix that. And that's just an ongoing thing for us, but other teachers don't get any kind of feedback if their playground doesn't meet that standard. So I think it's streamlining those things, and definitely looking at what we do, the interactions, what's developmentally appropriate based on the regulations. And that would include centers and things like that, because that's regulatory, but how to do that in a way that it's not, that teachers aren't focused on that. They're actually focused on the intentional part of being in a classroom with students. And I think that's, you know, and that's social emotional, that's academics, that's all of those pieces, just to ensure that we're supporting children. And I think as we, as you know, state funded programs use our assessment data, you know, we can begin to see changes, you know, in children as we look at their assessment data and see the growth of children. And we can use that, we actually use that to have conversations with our teachers if we see some some particular, groups of students in classrooms may be struggling a little bit, and just having those overall conversations and looking at the environment and what's going on in there. So I do think, us moving forward, providing as a consistent tool across the state, it allows us to all be able to have the same conversations that meet our district's needs, but we all have the same program.
And Whitney, to further add on what you were saying, even if you had like an initial, the beginning of the year district assurances that focused on the regulatory things, and for instance, if you did 3 minis across the fall, the winter, then the spring, and just had a checkbox where you could go back in and say, okay, on this day we were watching for the interactions, social emotional, interactions between the, but they still did have 6 science books, check. That way you're not doing it every single time, but you're spot checking it 3 times across the school year to maintain that those things are still in place like they were when they signed off in August, that the room was set up like it should be.
All right, I think this is that awkward silence that I talked about, waiting for a delay to see if anybody else is speaking. So I think this has been a great discussion, just talking through all of these questions. I think the pandemic, we hit on it, like what's next after the pandemic, as we went through that initial conversation. But just circling back to that question, does anybody have, anything that they're planning, for students or for their teachers, or anticipation of the fall? Just anything that you've processed through. We are actually right now trying to figure out what the fall is even going to look like for us. It's conversations with our district health staff and the health department. But knowing that even whenever, how little that we can get students in the classes, that, definitely that focus on social emotional and just, being supportive of children and families. I just wanted to circle back around to that question if anybody wanted to share anything.
I'll jump in there real quick. And when they were given the enrollment numbers, it said we were down 35% with at risk. So I always ask the question, where are the kids? One, I question for safety, but 2, will the kids return? And so those are just some of the things that, I think about. And I'm a very small district. Sorry, I got my phone call. I'm a very small district, so it really affects my staffing. I am down enough now to where I will lose an entire preschool classroom. And we do the recruitment. We're very active in our social media campaigns and our local radios and things like that. So it is a concern for the fall. Will we get the students back? Have parents found an alternative? Will our prior settings data for the home increase more than it's already been there? And right now we're seeing that our Brigance kindergarten readiness scores, our lowest scores come from in the home setting. So it has an additional impact, whether it be academic or social emotional, when students start kindergarten. So those are questions that we're having in our district. And again, we're small. It'd be interesting to see, but a drop in 35% at risk. Why is that? Is it because they didn't meet income eligibility? Is that because of the additional funding? I don't know. I don't have the answer. So those may be some things we need to think about.
And Barry, I agree with you because we're a smaller district as well. And we just had the initial part of kindergarten and preschool registration, and the numbers are still down. I mean, I was shocked at the lack of participation in that. And like you, it concerns me because of staffing. So, I mean, everybody wants to know what's preschool doing. I'm like, I can't tell you what we're doing yet because I'm really not sure what we're doing. But I mean, it scares me that amidst of trying to come out of the pandemic, people are still as reluctant as they were back last March.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will chime in and say that, we're currently planning for summer school. Our Head Start preschool students will be also attending summer school if they choose to. And our schools are planning for kindergarten camps. I mean, of course, right now we're in the middle of, we're always recruiting, but we're in our active recruitment time with Head Start Preschool and also with kindergarten registration. And we have a online registration or, face-to-face dates scheduled, in which families just call the school to come in face-to-face to register. But we're taking quite a few applications, I'll say, in my area for, the family advocates have been great, and the staff. All of our teachers, assistants, and family advocates take applications, as does the staff in this office. So we have taken quite a few applications. I don't know that I can say right at this point, thinking about this time of the school year or this month, that we are really down that much. I will know more because we do a lot in May and June, I think is when we get a lot. But, our summer school, I think, is going to be critical for us having our 3-year-olds return to us as 4-year-olds, and for all of our K-12, but really because social emotional learning is a huge part of summer school, and math and literacy focus, as well as gross motor time for all those grades. So that's really what we've got going on that we've been working on, is in addition to recruitment for both kindergarten and Head Start Preschool, is summer school and planning for camps.
In Scott County, we are not doing summer school, but we are doing some coming right off of screening and doing some intervention sessions, and hopefully going to get some ARC meetings down, because we're 100 kids down, and I'm concerned about that going into the fall. So we're trying to speed up the process a little bit by getting a head start on that this summer, so that we can that's fine. So that we can hopefully increase those numbers pretty quickly. Because we really, we're in the planning stages right now and just don't know what the fall is going to look like. Hopefully back in person and back to 4 days a week. But, until we see numbers and know kind of what the health department's telling us, we're not sure.
So what our plan is so far here in Paducah, and one of our family advocates had a really unique idea that I thought I'd share out to everybody, because I appreciated her out-of-the-box thinking. One of her ideas, and we've not made any contacts yet, but was to partner with our local community college and see, when they have their enrollment, if we can have a table set up to talk about preschool, because as families come to enroll and apply for college, right then and there, we can say, hey, we've got a public preschool or Head Start option. You can go ahead and complete an information sheet, so that, we try to take some of those barriers away. So I really appreciated her forward thinking in us calling the college. And so that's my next week's plan, is to call and see if we can be there during their enrollment. And also, she had called and tried to partner with some of the job fairs in the area. So as our families are getting back out into the workforce, we have the public preschool or Head Start program there represented. So we're, trying to think of some of those barriers. But just like Anna said, some after the pandemic, we are providing summer school for our children who are transitioning to kindergarten. And they're also in June, and then they'll also have an opportunity in July for 2 weeks for a Jumpstart Kindergarten. So I think it's just really meeting the families where they're at. We have some families that do want a virtual option this summer. And if we're able to provide that, that's exactly what we're going to do, just to continue that learning forward, to just give them the best Jumpstart. So I think there's lots of options. I think we all have a lot of great ideas.
For the students that haven't registered for summer school either session, we are providing, like we had done in the past prior to the pandemic, and prior to ever having this opportunity for summer school for pre-K, is that we do the 3- and 4-year-old packet with a calendar of activities and have daily activities. That was always like a June and July packet, and we get those out to families and all of that. So, and then we do have one other CECC event, is usually our biggest event attendance wise, and we host that at our community college location and take applications and recruit there, and that will be in the month of May, toward the end of the month. But the only thing we're not been able to offer yet, or has not been approved by our health department is doing screenings the way we had done them there at that event in the past. But that we typically take a lot of applications at that Supporting Parents for Ready Kids event that we have in May.
I think it was Whitney Fowler put in the chat that they do the local home and garden show and Walmart for recruiting. I think definitely it's knowing your community and where families are, like Christy said, meeting families where they are and being able to go and just help with the process and break down those barriers for families. Here in Fayette County, we are doing a Summer Ignite program, and it's actually for all grades, including preschool. And so it's for students that will be returning to preschool with us in the fall. And even those students going to kindergarten would participate in the preschool for the first 2 sessions. And then there will be a session 3 for children at their home school going to kindergarten for a week. So we have built in that here in Fayette County that's new for us as well. And we've actually had, a big turnout for that for families. So we're excited to be able to offer that. And I feel like, having this discussion, we all are in the same, here in the district, when you have this and you're thinking about preschool, it's typically, or for us here within our department and, planning with various people throughout the district. But to come together as a group and, if we have other colleagues that are listening and we know across the state, I think we're all, struggling with that of what it's going to look like in the fall, what the direction that we'll get from the health department. And that does make it, difficult as we try to plan for the fall about where to put children. Can we go face to face? So I think this is just a really great conversation to hear that we're all, right now struggling with the same things with the pandemic and moving forward and what that will look like. So great. That was a great discussion. Does anybody have anything else that they would want to add really to any 3 of the questions or to the pandemic question?
I guess my question is, I know like last year, everything was waived, regulation, class, everything was just not the same as we're used to. What is the guidance going forward? Do we know that yet? Is anything going to be waived, like home visits? Is, class sizes still have to be reduced? I guess that's where I need to start with.
Yeah, this is Andrea. So right now we're in discussions and talking about all of that information. Hopefully we'll be able to provide you all some guidance very soon. But as we know, things change and change rapidly. So we are talking about the waivers and what the department's jurisdiction over that now looks like and how we can move forward with those things. But yeah, definitely on our radar and our discussions for sure. I know it's not a straight answer, and I apologize for not being able to give you a straight answer, but hopefully one will be coming soon.
So as we wrap up this section of the agenda, are there any questions in the Q&A from the public or from the chat box that we need to consider during today's meeting?
Can I just ask a question? I was just curious. I didn't do it this time, and maybe I should have, and that's why I wanted to ask. But like the questions that were proposed here, should I or should we send those out in our regions and get feedback on those questions, or is it just for this group and discussion? I mean, prior to us meeting on these quarterly meetings, would it be, or should I or not, send this out to my region? And maybe some people did that and I did not. But as we've talked today, I thought, the other Head Start preschool directors in my region, because most of us are blended, not all, but most, I thought maybe I should have sent these questions because they may have thought of things that they wanted me to propose that, or talk about that I didn't.
And Andrea, I'm just speaking from, being the chair in this conversation and as a preschool coordinator, I think that's a great idea to be able to share the guiding questions with those, that are in your area and to be able to bring that feedback. I think that's a wonderful idea.
This is Andrea. So sure, yeah. I mean, I think that the one of the main purposes of this group was to increase communication with districts across the state. Having a group here that we can talk with and we can troubleshoot, we can and get you guys to take things back. Say, hey, here's what's going on. I will talk with leadership on my end, and then maybe during our next planning meeting for the next meeting, we can have that discussion. Sound good? I think it's a good idea, though, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Because I just, you know, we know we're all different by region for sure, and we are by district and size, and you know, things that we're dealing with and trying to, you know, all the challenges and celebrations that we all have. So thank you.
Thanks, Anna.
So are there any other questions? That was a great question, Anna. Thank you. In the chats or anything that we need to address? Or are we good to move to the next, to our closing remarks and the exit slip?
Dr. Stevenson, I believe we're good to move on. I don't see any additional questions in the chat.
Great, thank you. And I see the queue of the slides, so I'm assuming we're good to go. Our next meeting will be July 28th, and the times, I know the times were adjusted for this meeting, and we will definitely get out, because I'm not sure in front of me what the times for the next, if they would stay from 1 to 3 or would move back to 10 to 2, but we will get that information out, and somebody else on this call may be able to answer that very quickly.
This is Andrea. We'll work that out and let you all know for sure, well in advance of the time. I know July can kind of be tricky with getting things started in your district, as well as sometimes vacations if you're lucky enough to have a vacation. So we'll try and get that out to you as quickly as we can.
Please keep in mind we have an exit slip for the meeting as well, and I have put that in the chat for the members, and I will send that via email as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then our next meeting on the 28th will be another Teams live event. This was, I think, went really well for our first go at this. I appreciate everybody's use of the chat room and the leaving your cameras on and the muting and all of that. So I think we did a really good job, and I appreciate your all's input. We will definitely, we have a lot of things to consider and to do moving forward just to strengthen what we do currently in Kentucky and state funded. So thank you all very much. And don't forget to complete the exit slip. And Andrea, do you have any closing remarks to add?
Just a big thank you to you all, that's for sure.
Great. So to adjourn, I would like, I forgot, I'm looking at my agenda and I had my notes here, to have a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
Barry Lee, I'll make that motion to adjourn.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that, Whitney Fowler.
Great. Thank you. Our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.